December 1944. A captured German soldier expected to face brutal American captivity, starvation, and torture. Instead, he was served ice cream, given hot showers, and treated with a dignity he'd never experienced even in his own homeland. Within weeks, this enemy prisoner realized everything his government had told him about America was a complete lie, and the shocking abundance he witnessed would shatter his entire worldview forever. But what did he discover about American society that was so powerful it turned a devoted Nazi into one of democracy's greatest advocates? The winter air cut through Klaus Weber's torn uniform like broken glass. Snow, mixed with mud, covered the forest floor near the Belgian border. For 3 years, Klaus had believed what his teachers told him. America was weak. Americans were soft. They could never match the strength of the German soldier. Klaus grew up in a small town outside Munich. His father died fighting in the First War. His mother worked in a munitions factory, making bullets for the cause. Every morning at school, Klaus raised his arm and pledged his life to the fatherland. He was 19 when they sent him to fight. He was 22 when the Americans found him bleeding behind a fallen tree. The pain in his leg made him dizzy. Blood soaked through his wool socks. He had not eaten a real meal in 4 days. Back home, his mother got 1 egg per week. His sister got half a loaf of bread every 3 days. The radio told them Americans had no food either. The radio said Americans were starving just like Germans. Klaus heard boots crunching through the snow. American voices came closer. He tried to reach for his rifle, but his hands shook too much. 2 soldiers appeared through the trees. They wore thick coats and clean helmets. One soldier knelt down next to Klaus. The American's face looked young and kind. This confused Klaus. Enemy soldiers were supposed to be cruel. The American medic opened a metal box. Inside were white bandages, glass bottles of medicine, and metal tools that gleamed like silver. Klaus had never seen medical supplies so clean and new. Even German doctors used old rags and rusty needles. The medic wrapped Klaus's leg with soft white cloth. The bandage felt warm against his skin. Then something happened that made Klaus's heart stop. The other American soldier pulled out a chocolate bar. Real chocolate, dark brown and thick as a man's thumb. The soldier broke off a piece and held it out to Klaus. Klaus stared at the chocolate. He had not seen chocolate in 2 years. Not since before the war got bad. His hands trembled as he took the small piece and put it in his mouth. The chocolate melted on his tongue like butter. It tasted rich and sweet and perfect. Klaus closed his eyes. How could the enemy have chocolate when Germans had none? How could American soldiers carry real medicine when German hospitals had empty shelves? The American medic gave Klaus a drink of water from a clean metal bottle. The water tasted pure and cold. As they lifted Klaus onto a stretcher, he saw something that made his stomach turn. The Americans threw away half-eaten food. Pieces of white bread, chunks of meat, an apple with only 2 bites taken from it. Klaus watched the food hit the ground. In Germany, people would fight over those scraps. Children would cry for that apple core. The stretcher bounced as they carried Klaus through the forest. Each step took him further from everything he knew. Each step took him closer to a truth that would change his life forever. Camp Carson, Colorado. Klaus could not believe his eyes. The American prison camp looked like a small city. Clean wooden buildings stretched across flat ground as far as he could see. Electric lights hung from tall poles. Hot water came from metal pipes. Back home, even rich people had no hot water in winter. The first morning, an American guard brought Klaus 3 meals. Breakfast had scrambled eggs, thick bacon, white toast with butter, and hot coffee with real cream. Klaus stared at the yellow eggs on his metal plate. In Germany, his whole family shared 1 egg per week. Here, enemy prisoners got 2 eggs just for breakfast. At lunch, they served him beef stew with chunks of meat the size of his thumb. Carrots and potatoes floated in rich brown gravy. The bread was soft and white like clouds. Klaus ate slowly, waiting for someone to take it away. No one came. When he finished, a kitchen worker asked if he wanted more. Klaus nodded, too shocked to speak. The afternoon brought something Klaus thought was impossible. A red truck pulled up to the camp fence. Bold white letters on the side spelled COCA-COLA. American guards bought bottles of dark fizzy drink and shared them with prisoners. The Coca-Cola was cold and sweet, and made Klaus's tongue tingle. He had heard about this drink on German radio. They said it was poison that made Americans weak. Klaus drank 2 bottles and felt stronger than he had in months. The camp library held more books than Klaus had ever seen in one place. Thousands of books lined wooden shelves from floor to ceiling. Prisoners could read anything they wanted. Klaus picked up a book about America. The pictures showed huge cities with tall buildings and wide roads filled with cars. Every family seemed to own a car. In Germany, only government officials had cars. That evening, Klaus watched American guards play cards and smoke cigarettes. They laughed and told jokes. One guard showed Klaus pictures of his wife and baby daughter back in Ohio. The man's face glowed with pride and love. Klaus remembered what his teachers said about American soldiers. They were supposed to be heartless killers with no families or feelings. Sunday brought the biggest shock of all. The camp kitchen served a feast that made Klaus dizzy. Roast chicken with crispy skin. Mashed potatoes with real butter. Green beans cooked in bacon fat. Apple pie with thick ice cream that melted on his warm plate. Ice cream in December. Klaus had never eaten ice cream, even in summer. As Klaus lay on his clean mattress that night, his mind spun like a broken wheel. American prisoners ate better than German generals. American guards were kinder than German officers. American camps had more books than German schools. Every day brought new proof that everything he learned about America was wrong. Deep in his chest, Klaus felt something crack, like ice breaking on a frozen pond. His old beliefs were melting away, and he could not stop it from happening. Thanksgiving Day, 1944. Klaus woke up to the smell of roasting turkey floating through the cold morning air. American guards told all the prisoners they would eat a special meal to celebrate an American holiday. Klaus did not understand why enemy prisoners deserved to celebrate anything. At noon, the camp dining hall doors opened. Klaus walked inside and stopped breathing. Long wooden tables stretched across the room like a great feast hall. White tablecloths covered every surface. Real plates made of thick ceramic sat at each place. Silver forks and knives gleamed under electric lights. Klaus had never eaten from real plates, even at home. American volunteers from the nearby town had come to serve the meal. Old women with gray hair and kind eyes, young mothers holding babies, teenage girls in clean dresses. They smiled at the German prisoners like they were welcome guests instead of enemy soldiers. Klaus could not understand this kindness. The food came in waves that made Klaus dizzy. Whole roasted turkeys with golden brown skin, mountains of fluffy mashed potatoes covered in rich gravy, sweet potatoes topped with melted butter, green bean casserole with crispy onions on top, warm dinner rolls that steamed when Klaus broke them open, cranberry sauce the color of dark rubies, But the moment that changed everything came when an old American woman approached Klaus's table. Her white hair was pulled back in a neat bun. Her blue eyes twinkled behind wire glasses. She carried a pie with a golden crust that smelled like cinnamon and apples. The woman cut a thick slice and placed it on Klaus's plate. Then she did something that made Klaus's heart nearly stop. She patted his shoulder gently and said in broken German, "You are far from home, young man. I have a son fighting somewhere in Europe. I pray someone is kind to him, too." Klaus stared at the slice of apple pie. Steam rose from the flaky crust. Sweet apple filling bubbled through small cuts on top. This American woman had a son fighting against Germany. Her son might be shooting at German soldiers right now, yet here she stood, serving pie to a German prisoner with the same love she would show her own child. The bite of pie tasted like heaven. Warm apples and cinnamon and sugar melted on his tongue, but Klaus barely noticed the taste. His mind was spinning too fast. How could these people be the enemy? How could they be evil when they treated prisoners like family? That night, Klaus sat on his bunk and wrote in a small notebook the Americans had given him. His hands shook as he formed the words. Everything they told us about America was a lie. These people are not weak. They are not cruel. They have so much food. They give the best to their enemies. They have so much kindness. They share it with soldiers who tried to kill their sons. Klaus thought about his mother back in Germany. She was probably eating watery soup and stale bread for dinner. She was probably cold and scared and hungry. Meanwhile, Klaus had eaten turkey and pie and slept on clean sheets in a warm building. The contrast felt like a knife in his chest. Days passed, and Klaus could not stop thinking about the old woman's words. She prayed for her son's enemies to be treated with kindness. In Germany, they taught hatred for the enemy. In America, they taught love even for those who fought against them. Klaus realized the terrible truth. America's power did not come from hatred or fear or cruelty. It came from having so much that they could afford to be generous. It came from being so strong that they could afford to be gentle. It came from values that made them help others instead of hurting them. The boy who believed in German strength was gone forever. In his place sat a man who understood what real strength looked like. Real strength looked like an old woman serving pie to enemy soldiers while praying for their souls. May 1946. The war was over. Klaus stood on the deck of a gray transport ship as it sailed toward Hamburg, Germany. In his worn canvas bag, he carried treasures from his time in America. A small American flag given to him by a guard. 3 books about democracy written in simple German. A photograph of the old woman who served him pie on Thanksgiving Day. And a small wooden cross carved by an American soldier who had become his friend. The ship's horn blew as they entered Hamburg harbor. Klaus looked out at his homeland and felt sick to his stomach. The city looked like a giant had stepped on it and crushed it flat. Broken buildings reached toward the sky like broken teeth. Piles of rubble filled the streets where houses used to stand. Smoke still rose from some ruins, even though the fighting had ended a year ago. Klaus walked down the gangplank on shaking legs. German families waited for returning prisoners. Their clothes were patched and torn. Their faces were thin and hollow from hunger. Their eyes looked empty and defeated. Klaus remembered how healthy and strong the American civilians had looked when they visited the prison camp. The train ride home took 12 hours. Klaus sat by a cracked window and watched the German countryside roll past. Every town was damaged. Every bridge was broken. Every farm looked abandoned. Klaus thought about the green fields and neat farms he had seen in Colorado. America had fought the same war. But American cities were not destroyed. American people were not starving. Klaus's mother waited at the small train station in his hometown. She looked 20 years older than when he left. Her gray hair was thin and brittle. Her dress hung loose on her tiny frame. When she hugged him, Klaus could feel her ribs through the worn fabric. She felt like a bird in his arms. At home, his mother served him dinner. A small bowl of thin soup with a few pieces of potato floating in watery broth. One slice of dark bread made from sawdust and flour. Klaus ate slowly, remembering the mountains of food he had left behind in America. His mother watched him eat with hungry eyes, but she did not take any food for herself. That night, Klaus gave his mother one of the chocolate bars he had saved from the ship. Her eyes filled with tears when she tasted the sweet American chocolate. She had not eaten chocolate in 4 years. Klaus told her about the meals he ate in prison, about the ice cream and turkey and apple pie. His mother listened with her mouth hanging open. Klaus showed his little sister the books the Americans had given him. She could barely read, but Klaus taught her new words every day. Words like freedom and democracy and kindness. He told her about the American guards who shared pictures of their families, about the volunteers who served food to enemy soldiers, about the old woman who prayed for her enemies. Years passed. Klaus married a local girl and had 3 children of his own. He taught them English and told them stories about America. He showed them the photograph of the kind old woman and explained how her love had changed his heart. His children grew up believing that enemies could become friends and that true strength came from helping others. Klaus became a teacher in his town. He taught German children about the world beyond their borders. He told them that different did not mean bad, and that other countries had good people too. He taught them to question what leaders told them and to think for themselves. On quiet evenings, Klaus would sit by his window and hold the small American flag. He would remember the taste of apple pie and the sound of American laughter. He would think about the old woman's gentle words and her son who might have survived the war. Klaus often told his children, "I went to America as a prisoner of war, but I returned home as a prisoner of truth. And that truth sets me free to see the world as it really is." The boy who had believed in hatred learned that love was stronger than any army.